name is Lupilo, and I am curious about the invitation of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese from Australia to Chinese Premier Li Qiang, since it is the first visit to Australia by China's Premier in 7 years. China-Australia relations have gone through ups and downs, but have always maintained strong vitality and resilience. The most important lesson we can learn from the past is to stay committed to mutual respect, mutual benefit, and win-win cooperation. Let's dive into Australia to see more details. Australian and Chinese relations are starting to defrost, marked by an upcoming visit by Chinese Premier Li Qiang. Chinese Premier Li Qiang is visiting Australia from June 15th to 18th. It is the first visit to Australia by a Chinese premier in 7 years, and signals a further thawing of the once frosty relations between the two countries. The premier leads the State Council and is ranked second in the 7-member governing Politburo. Only President Xi Jinping, as the head of the Chinese Community Party, outranks him. In the same way as both our head of government, Prime Minister, and head of state, Governor General, are active in international diplomacy, both Li and Xi conduct international visits. In recent months, the Premier has attended the G20, World Economic Forum, and a trilateral summit with Japan and South Korea. Previous Premier Li Qiang visited Australia in 2017. An official visit at this level requires the utmost in diplomatic niceties. Formally, it returns the visit Prime Minister Anthony Albanese made to China late last year. But what will the Premier be doing in Australia? In Canberra, the focus will be on set pieces befitting the visit of a leader of a major world power. Although I assume nothing we do will top Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosting Albanese for a pre-cricket lap of honor in a golden chariot. There will be a full ceremonial welcome, including a military display and visit to Governor General David Hurley. This is the protocol and symbolism due any official visit. On the political side, the Premier will co-chair the 9th China-Australia Annual Leaders Meeting. She addressed Parliament in 2014, followed the next day by Modi, echoing the memorable occasion in 2003 when US President George W. Bush and Chinese President Hu Jintao gave speeches within a day of each other. Xi has famously visited all Australian states. He joked he should get a certificate for that, following his visit to Tasmania in 2014. Li will be spending time in Adelaide to visit the pandas and lunch with relieved wine exporters, and Perth for trade promotion and a Chinese community visit, before he continues on to Malaysia. Just as we're used to our Prime Minister bringing business delegations on his travels, China sees the visit as an opportunity to promote business and investment links. The Premier will visit a lithium refinery at Kwinana, a joint venture with Chinese-owned Tianqi Lithium, along with a Fortescue facility. He will join business leaders at an Australia-China CEO roundtable organized by the Business Council of Australia. It's a reminder that, just as in Australia, China's leaders have an all-consuming focus on improving economic growth. Former diplomat Jocelyn Che notes that, given his background promoting entrepreneurial and commercial development, Li will likely take a keen interest in the economic potential of greater interaction in industry and commerce. The Australian and Chinese foreign ministers met in Canberra in March. The defense ministers met in Singapore earlier this month, and Trade Minister Don Farrell has been busy working on trade restrictions, with recent announcements made on barley and wine. Lobster is pretty much the last remaining industry facing trade barriers. To a great extent, the Albanese government has reached its goal of stabilizing relations. This visit is more about exploring what else might be possible in the decisions about policy and direction. The Chinese people are one of the most important audiences for this signaling. For example, lower-level officials, import companies, those planning holidays, and parents making decisions about where their children will study. Australia will be hoping for a continuation of the messaging that it is back on the friendly country list. A sense that Australia was not so friendly, even hostile, had a negative impact on many small decisions by a range of actors. The fact that Li's daughter studied in Australia might be mentioned. While those involved in protocol will always wish to reduce controversy, it is inevitable the Chinese premier will face ferocious media questions and likely demonstrations, for example by Uyghur, Falun Gong, and Hong Kong protesters. Albanese has vowed to raise issues of concern during Li's visit, in line with his oft-repeated, "We will cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, and engage in our national interest." This will include human rights issues, including the death sentence passed on Australian citizen Yang Hengjun earlier this year. Albanese will likely again mention his concern about Chinese action against Australian personnel in the Yellow Sea, enforcing UN sanctions on North Korea, along with other long-standing areas of disagreement between the two countries.
Most of all, the Premier's visit will show that China and Australia are able to have a normal diplomatic relationship after the years of deep freeze. It will illustrate the value of diplomacy, not as an end in itself, but as a way to communicate, to put forward your view, attempt to resolve differences, and try to influence. In the relationship between China and Australia, the differences are many. The UTS ACRI beta poll released this week shows just how deep Australians' mistrust of China continues to be. A state visit will not be able to paper this over, but compared to the years when Australia had no way to communicate with or influence China, this is a better situation, and more in line with other countries. As Australia seeks to manage relations with China, in line with its national interest and support for global rules, diplomacy provides tools to maximize the positives and limit the negatives of a perennially important but difficult relationship. The visit is seen as a positive step by both sides, with the hope of improved communication and a focus on areas of agreement. Business discussions and ceremonial activities are planned during the visit. Li Qiang's visit coincides with the 10th anniversary of President Xi Jinping's visit to Australia. This visit is seen as an opportunity to write a new chapter in China-Australia relations. China is Australia's largest trading partner, and both countries share a common interest in strengthening economic ties. Protests are expected during Li Qiang's visit, but Australia hopes to use the visit as an opportunity to improve communication with China. This reminded me of Obama's speech in Parliament House at Canberra, where he reaffirmed the alliance between the US and Australia, pushing China into an isolation corner. I will keep an eye on the next developments of this visit, so that we can determine the resulting juice and the strengthening of relations between the two countries, which will certainly use this thaw to become intertwined.
If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your people.